So there's a lot of talk these days about flow state and being in flow, and for good reason, because being in flow feels absolutely amazing. And it's just when you're totally immersed in something and it's like time just stands still, or you're not really aware of time anymore. And it's just like an incredible feeling. But I started to think about, well, what really is flow? And so when you look at a river, any body of water, you notice that there's no separation, right? It's literally just flowing. And when you're in that flow state, it's the same thing. There's no separation, because I think what brings us out of flow, or what makes it difficult to achieve flow, is when it feels like there's a gap between where we are and where we want to be. And I think this can be especially true if we're cultivating a new skill, or we're starting something that we haven't done for a long time, so we feel a little bit rusty. And then what happens is we can start to place judgment on whatever we're doing, and either we start to compare ourselves negatively to others who maybe are more far along than ourselves, or we start to compare ourselves to how we think we should be or where we think we should be. And just to kind of give like an example, so with writing, so I know a lot of writers have been through this. I used to experience this a lot, where writing could sometimes be very unpleasant, because I would constantly be negatively judging myself. Like, I would be working on a paragraph and I would spend, a good amount of time, and then I still wouldn't be happy with it. And then I would be comparing myself negatively to other writers, or maybe things that I had written in the past that I thought were a lot better. And then also thoughts would come up like, what if after all this work nobody even reads it? And so, and I know a lot of writers go through this, because this is kind of where procrastination comes in, and just getting distracted. And with physical exercise, physical fitness, it can be the same thing, especially if you haven't exercised in a long time and you try to get back into it, and it could be very unpleasant. And again, comparing yourself negatively to others and thinking, well, what if this all amounts to nothing? And I found in every case, but especially these two cases, because these are both things that I've experienced, what helps is to bring the future into the now. And so whatever it is that you hope to accomplish, and so let's say with fitness, with physical fitness and exercise or diet, any sort of plan, right, where you're trying to achieve your ideal peak fitness level, or your ideal body. And so what helped me was just picturing my ideal body, and picturing myself, just feeling really good about like how I looked and how I felt in my body. Because what originally initiated my desire to really go all in on fitness was just looking in the mirror one day and just not being happy with what I saw, but even more so, not being happy with how I felt in my own skin. And so yeah, I used that feeling of, just being happy with how I felt, and being happy with how I felt in my clothes, and just how I felt in my own skin, and using that feeling to guide me. And it got to a point where exercise started to feel very euphoric. And I think the important part is that what kept me going, where in the past I might have fallen out of it, was that I did not weigh myself, I did not measure myself. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do these things, but I'm just saying what helped me, because I know in the past I would do those things and then I would feel discouraged by my perceived lack of progress. And I didn't I didn't time myself. Because sometimes I would go and I would do sprints on the track, and I didn't time myself doing those sprints, because if I had, I probably would have gotten very discouraged. And I did not compare myself to others. And I remember, so this was probably like a good, 20 years ago. I was in college at the time, and I remember taking this PE class, and we would do things like we would run up and down stairs around campus, and we would do jump roping, and things that the old me, who just kind of thought of myself as being kind of like out of shape, and the old me would have found those activities miserable, but something about it just felt very joyful and very euphoric, even though I was not yet at my peak fitness level or anything like that. But I genuinely believe it was because I was allowing that vision to guide me to the point where it's like they became superimposed. And this is where the whole idea of flow comes in. And so it's like there was no longer that gap anymore between where I was and where I wanted to be. It was just like all one. And I know I talked about this in a past video, but there's a speech where Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about this as well. And in the early days when he first got into bodybuilding and fitness and all of that, that's what kept him going, was that guiding vision. And people would ask him, well, don't you get tired, being at the gym and lifting weights for hours and hours? And he said, no, it was joyful, it was euphoric, because it was that vision that was guiding him. And I can say that it's effective because, again, that was probably a good 20 years ago, and I've been able to maintain my ideal body since then, and it no longer feels like effort. I no longer even consider it exercising. It's just something that I genuinely love to do, and I feel very joyful when I do it. And anytime whatever I'm doing gets to a point where it starts to feel like force and effort, I no longer enjoy doing it, I just stop doing it, because I figure, there's enough ways, or there's enough different exercises out there, enough different activities out there, that I can find one that I actually enjoy doing. And so I force myself, life's too short, to force myself to do something that I don't even enjoy doing. And I've actually heard a lot of people, in fact, a fitness trainer, a very well-known fitness trainer that I actually did copywriting for at one point, he talked about this as well. He had worked with people who were actually very overweight, sometimes hundreds of pounds overweight, and was able to get them to their ideal body weight, not by torturing themselves, but simply by finding an activity that you enjoy, because that's when it becomes sustainable. And that's when you're able to stay like in that flow state where it's no longer about effort. You're no longer watching the clock thinking, oh God, when is this going to be over so I can go watch TV or just do something that I actually enjoy, right? And no, it becomes like an end in itself. It becomes giddy and euphoric. And so now I'm finding the same thing with writing as well. I no longer have to use apps, like Freedom or some of those apps where it blocks like internet, it blocks web browsing basically, so it forces you to just focus on your writing. And no shame, no judgment if you do use those apps. They were very helpful for me in the early days in staying focused and staying disciplined. But now I no longer have a need for them. And it's the same thing. I just envision myself as being that successful author, as being that prosperous author. And pretty soon it's just like, I don't even consider it future anymore. It's just all one. It's all rolled into one. It's all superimposed one on top of the other. And the feeling that I get from writing is just so joyful. And I actually feel annoyed whenever anything like tugs me away or pulls me away from it. And so yes, I would encourage any activity that you're doing, especially if it's something new, a new skill that you're cultivating, something that you're just getting into, or something that you're doing but you haven't done in a long time, and maybe you feel a little bit rusty. And so this is kind of where the self-judgment can come into play, and or the worry, like what if this all amounts to nothing, that can come into play. And these are all things that can disrupt your flow or make it difficult to even get in the flow in the first place. And I'm going to encourage you just to conjure up that vision of you having already achieved your goal, and just to, there's a really good Reverend Ike sermon where he says, just get intoxicated on your desire, just get drunk on your desire. And so just allow the love of that vision just to become all encompassing, just to become, so that it becomes superimposed over everything else, and it drowns out the frustration, the doubt, that negative self-talk that can sometimes weigh us down, like I really suck at this, or this isn't working, or what if I never achieve my goal. All of that just goes out the window, because the love of what you're doing becomes so loud, becomes so all-encompassing. And it is very much like a feeling of intoxication, that it just drowns out everything else. And so that is what I would recommend for getting into the flow state. And pretty soon it's not even like you're trying to get into the flow state, it just takes you over. And I think there's a really good house anthem called "Let the Music Take You Over." And you're just letting the vision take you over. You're just letting it take control until it doesn't even really, you don't even really call it a vision anymore. It's like the now and the vision, the future self, it just is all rolled into one. And so with that, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.